Hey folks, in this video we're going to cover the latest Tinto Talks for Project Caesar, aka EU5, and this is going to cover the diplomatic system in the game. Johan does call out immediately that if you have played a lot of Paradox games, you probably know most that we're going to talk about today, and that is for a pretty good reason because although I've liked to see the evolution of most of these systems in EU5, I think the diplomatic system actually works pretty well in EU4, and I think it's probably the best diplomatic system in all Paradox games. Let me know what you think in the comments down below, but I don't think it's that bad. Like, yes, could it work differently? Could there be other ways that it could work? Yes, of course there could be, but I think for the actual functionality working, and in not having too many crazy outcomes, I think the EU4 diplomacy system actually works well. So if you have played a lot of that game, you'll know a lot of what we're going to talk about today. But I'm sure there's many people watching these videos who haven't played EU4, maybe haven't played it for a long time, and a little bit of a refresher here, basically, of the diplomatic actions that you could take, or at least most of them. Johan does go into that we're going to get a lot more stuff after Christmas around some diplomacy stuff as well. But this is the main overview, so let's just get straight into it. And the first thing he's going to talk about here is diplomats, and while the game will not have the immortal envoys of EU4, they're limited how much diplomacy you could do at one time. In Project Caesar, we do have diplomatic corps, or diplomats as they refer to them, so it is going to work slightly differently to EU4 in this regard. This represents how much diplomacy a country can do in a given time. Some advances, laws, or societal values will increase this amount, while there are also some buildings that will have an impact on it as well. I'm guessing like embassies or something. Every diplomatic action you do requires at least one diplomat, and while these are a renewable resource, kind of a funny way to talk about people in a way in a game, you will need to ration your use of these. So you can see, again, a little bit weird here with the screenshot, you will gain 0.3 diplomats each month. I don't know whether they should just rename diplomats, because in EU4 it was limited. You would have like 3 diplomats and you could send them to 3 countries at a time. And then when they came back, you could then send them to do something else somewhere else. It looks like in EU5, you're going to have basically a resource that's called diplomats. Maybe this should be called like diplomatic actions or something like that. But I don't know, gaining like a percentage of a diplomat each month just sounds weird to me. It just sounds odd when you're reading it. And you can see in this example, the base value, aristocracy is given some more bonuses, and then there's some other things that you can increase later. And then also you have a maximum of 4 diplomats in this example that is based on your country, and you are a kingdom. So yeah, it does have like these diplomats, but it's not the same by the sounds of it as EU4, where you literally had like 4 diplomats that you could send off to do different things, and then they came back. And that was like the limiting factor. So you couldn't just curry favor with everyone at the same time. You had to pick and choose where you wanted to focus. It looks like it is going to work that way. It's just kind of slightly different player facing. The next thing is opinions. In every grand strategy games they've made, they've tracked relations between countries, often in the completely natural and intuitive range of -200 to +200. And a little bit of a sarcastic comment there, I guess, by Johan, but I think it actually makes sense how that works, where you have just the -200 to +200, and you can see kind of like how much a country likes you or how much you like another country. Along those lines, I don't know, that came across as kind of sarcastic by him, but I actually think it is relatively natural and intuitive. I guess it is a little bit weird. If I have a friend, I'm not like, oh, I like you +70, and my other friend, I like you +100. But I think in a game, it works pretty well how it is. And then he does go on to say, early on, the relation was a single value, but in EU4, over a decade ago, they introduced the concept that country A could view country B one way, and country B could view country A another way. This game, as I've said, is no different in that regard. So yes, if you haven't played EU4, you could like said country +100, but they might not like you the same amount. So you could like somebody, but they might hate you. And it kind of worked that way. If you play Crusader Kings, it's very much how Crusader Kings works as well. You can like another leader, but he might not actually like you in return. These opinions are calculated depending on various states between countries, religion, culture, diplomacy, and much more. And there are temporary impacts from actions. So the biggest one's probably like, you declared war on me. That would be like a -80 or something, and then that will tick down over time. So gradually they'll forget that you declared war on them, or they forgive you, however you want to explain it, and then ultimately they'll kind of forget about that in their opinion modifiers. Opinion is how much a country likes or dislikes another country. The difference between trust and opinion is that a high opinion will stop a country from being hostile, but would also need trust to be able to work together. And again, trust was in EU4, and he's going to cover that in a second as well. They have multiple ways to influence this in diplomacy, but the most direct ones that you're often going to use is improve relations and send gift diplomatic actions. So in these, you're either sending a diplomat and he eventually, like curries opinion from the other people, whispering in their ear saying how great's this other nation, and they gradually like you. And then there's obviously the other way, just send them some money and they'll like you a little bit more. I've always thought this is kind of overpowered, but it looks like it's staying in some form in this game. I don't know, something about like a country hating you and then you send them like 400 gold and they just suddenly go, yeah, actually, I really like you. Like, surely you'd take that money, but still be like, it's a bit suspicious you're sending me money. I'm probably going to like you a little bit more. You did send me some money, but also, I don't know, it seems a little bit suspicious you've done that. But anyway, that is coming back with this game. And you can see in this next screenshot, the Neapolitan opinion of the Crown of Aragon. The opinion is -30 at the moment. Different culture, different court language. So I don't know, that might have been mentioned elsewhere, but I guess court language is in EU5. That may have been mentioned in previous dev diaries and I've just forgotten. But yeah, it looks like we are having language differences in this game as well. That did come to Crusader Kings 3. Neapolitan view of Catholic countries, and then recent conflict lost. Again, that's the one I was talking about. That is going to be a modifier that does improve. That's what that in brackets means. If you are new to Paradox games, it is -40 at the moment, and that will kind of reduce or kind of like improve, depending on how you want to look at it, by 3 a year. So, after what, like 13 years, the modifier will basically be gone at that point. That is something that's like a temporary modifier, depending on what you've been getting up to. And then as Johan mentioned, trust is coming back, and trust represents how likely one country is to think that another country is going to act honorably towards them. Whether friend or foe, trust is crucial for forging lasting agreements. Trust is hard to get, and it is very easy to lose. You can always send a diplomat to profess trust, and this will increase their trust of you, but your diplomatic relationship will be lowered for the next 5 years. That's interesting then. I don't know if it is how it works in EU4. Someone can let me know in the comments, but yeah, it looks like you can increase the trust, so you're kind of trading diplomatic reputation to make this nation trust you specifically. So I guess this is to counteract you being able to just increase the trust with a bunch of people, maybe get alliances, and then have, shenanigan fun times. I guess lowering your diplomatic reputation means you can't just go around increasing your trust with everyone, because that is going to affect other modifiers as well. Another system coming back is favors. Favors represent how much one country has promised or otherwise owes another country. Favors can be spent to ask another country to do something. If favors get too unbalanced, refusing to do these things can cause a loss of trust or even diplomatic reputation. You gain favors by helping your allies and supporting them in need. So, for example, if they call you into a war, if you actually help them in that war, you'll then earn their trust, which I think makes sense to players. You're actually doing what you said you would, so they then trust you more, and then you can kind of trade that trust in for other benefits in the future. You can also use some of your diplomats to curry favors. This will reduce the monthly diplomats you gain each month, but at the same time grant your country favors on the target country, and they get favors on you. So it's a bit of a, push and pull there as to whether you're going to want to use that or not. And you can see here, currying favors with the Crown of Castile. The favors they owe us changes by plus 0.5 each month due to the base value, and then also the cultural traditions can affect it as well. No effect in this example. And as always, these are not finalized figures. Don't worry about it too much. These are just examples at the moment that Johan is showing off. The next system coming back is spy networks. This describes the extent to which a country has infiltrated another with a network of informants, double agents, and general turncoats, and thus how much inside knowledge they have of that country. This can then be used for a variety of insidious diplomatic actions. You need to use a diplomat to start building a spy network, and while it is active, you will gain less diplomats each month. So again, kind of how it works in EU4. In EU4, you'd have to designate one of your diplomats to do this somewhere, and if you only had, say, 3 diplomats, that meant you'd only have 2 other diplomats to do other actions. Again, in EU5, it looks like diplomats is like a resource, not actual like people that are part of your country. The speed at which your network will build depends on your network construction capacity and the target country's counter-espionage, reducing it. The size of your spy network in a country impacts your siege ability and how much aggressive expansion you get from treating them badly as well. So that is some other modifiers that this will do. And then we've got the active spy network in the Kingdom of Portugal. The spy network will change by 1.04 a month, and then you've got the base value, Aragonese spy network construction, Portuguese counter-espionage, and then the Catalan culture versus the Portuguese culture as well. This just showing really how those change. and then how you are going to get some benefits out of building these spy networks and why you would do this versus just using your diplomat to do something else. The next thing here is diplomatic reputation. This was spoken about earlier, and again, this is something that was in EU4. This represents how highly regarded your country is in international relations. There are advances that will increase it, but it is also increased by your country's prestige and decreased by your aggressive expansion. AI countries look very much at diplomatic reputation when it comes to accepting diplomatic offers. So if you are trying to be a nice nation, just trying to build up alliances, do a lot of trading, something like that, you're going to want to build this up as much as you can to then get this affecting other areas of the game. I think that's basically, again, how it worked in EU4. This really was like a base boost to all your other modifiers, and it really helped you do other things in the game. You don't like trade this in directly for something. It's more of like a game-wide modifier. The next thing we're going to cover is diplomatic range. This was a concept they introduced in Imperator Rome. That actually surprised me. I thought this was in games earlier than Imperator. I mean, you just say here that this was mostly something that the AI used, so it was in earlier games. You just couldn't see it as a player that easily. I think there were mods that allowed you to see it in earlier games, I guess. I just remember it being in stuff before Imperator, I'm sure, but I might be misremembering. Diplomatic range limits the physical distance diplomats can travel to conduct diplomacy in another country, and this is the distance traveled between one capital city to another capital city. So this just limits how far you can interact with other nations. I think this does make sense. I know some people don't like diplomatic range, but I think it does prevent you just interacting with anyone on the map. I guess you could say like, well, if I can sail to Turkey, why can't I sail to Egypt? But I don't know. I guess there has got to be some kind of limit to how it works, and that is how it's going to work once again in EU5. Next, we've got rivals. In Project Caesar, we will have a system of rivals, and it is very similar to EU4, but with a few differences. First of all, the selection of a rival is less opaque and follows a few simple rules. A valid rival is someone with a geographical area that is similar or higher ranked to your own. The geographical area for an empire is the same continent or adjacent subcontinent, while for a country, it is the same area or adjacent province definition. Of course, you can always rival someone that has declared you as a rival. I think just kind of narrowing who you could actually rival. Again, this was in EU4, you could rival other nations. Like if you're England, you'd rival France, and you would rival like 2 or 3 other countries, and then they would be kind of the people you're aiming to either go to war with or affect in some way. And it looks like that is coming back, but with a few more limitations, I think, to prevent you like rivaling nations that you wouldn't really realistically be a rival of. It looks like it is kind of limiting that a little bit. Secondly, if you don't pick enough rivals, your actions that increase aggressive expansion will give you more, and your spy network will become weaker. I'm not sure about this. This is one thing that always kind of, I don't know, not like weirded me out, but I always found a little bit odd, is that in EU4, you would have, say, like 3 rival slots, and you were supposed to always fill them, like always have 3 rivals. If you had 3 eligible rivals you could choose. I don't know, to me it's just a little bit weird that you have to have like 3 rivals. You wouldn't just say, again, as England, like I just rival France. Because you had, say, 3 slots, you had to pick 2 other people. And again, it's kind of pushing that into the system here as well. I do wonder if it's something to do with the AI. So if you rival those nations, it triggers something that the AI will maybe do actions against you a little bit more, kind of building up like dynamic gameplay in a way, where you will rival someone and then they'll rival you back, and then the AI knows to focus on you a little bit. I'm not too sure. Again, let me know what you think in the comments, but I always found it a little bit weird that you have to have the set amount of rivals it thinks you should, and you can't just say like, I don't want any rivals, I just want to have a happy-go-lucky game. And you can do that, but as it says here, there are modifiers that affect you if you do that. The third difference this will make is that you can always create a cast a spell on your rivals if you have a spy network built up on them. So again, this is how it worked in EU4. You build up a certain amount of like power, and then you would trade that in for a claim on some of their land. Finally, there is no cooldown on replacing a rival, but it will cost you 25 stability. I don't think a major change there, to be honest. Remember that a rival is a country that's perceived as having conflicting interest and will block you from having alliances. Any country that shares a rival will also have higher opinion of you. So again, that is like one of the benefits of this. Say everyone rivaled France, then they would all like each other more. My enemy is your enemy and all that kind of thing. So it did also kind of help push certain alliances to happen. So again, not the worst system. I just think it a little bit too, I guess, like gamified of it, which is weird because most of the EU5 things we've seen is trying to get away from that kind of gamification of things. But we won't hold up on that too much. You can see here a nice map here showing the possible rivals for Aragon. So you've got Castile, Portugal, Morocco, Tunis, Naples, and France. So the kind of large nations that are very close to them. that you would think historically would have been rivals of them. That is how it's going to work. Again, if you've not played EU4, that's pretty much how it worked in EU4 as well. The next thing is diplomatic capacity. As mentioned back in Tinto Talks 12, they've changed diplomatic relations slots to become something of a capacity system instead, where the cost for an alliance depends on the power of the ally, and similarly, subjects cost different things depending on their size and type. So diplomatic capacity of Aragon. Aragon is using half their capacity to make Majorca a vassal. So that is kind of taking away some of your diplomatic capacity because you're like overseeing another country kind of. And then the max capacity is 3.12 due to the base value, kingdom, outward, which I think is a societal value, and then diplomatic relations. So again, if you increase that, that will help you as well. But you can see here, especially early in the game, Aragon having Majorca as a vassal is actually consuming quite a lot of their capacity. They might look to annex them or something like that, and then that will free up that capacity to do something else instead. So next they're going to talk about the diplomatic actions and treaties that you can do. He does call out here that unions and subjects aren't going to be talked about today. That is going to be covered in a later Tinto Talks. I imagine they want to go into a little bit more detail about that, and this is more of a brief overview. Diplomatic actions cost a diplomat to do, but not all of them will actually create a treaty. A treaty is something that lasts over a period of time and can be used from anything from an alliance to food access for your armies. And then he's going to go through a bunch of these now. So the first ones are friendly actions. This category of actions also includes some of the ones mentioned already, like improving opinion, professing trust, currying favors, and a few other things. But here are some other examples. So you've got defensive leagues. Some of us may recognize this from Imperator, but it's basically a defensive alliance. So if any of you get attacked, you will help the other person. Guarantees. In this game, you can also ask a powerful country to guarantee you, which is a change. So if you're a small nation, you can go up to England or somebody and say, I'll give you all this stuff. Can you guarantee my independence? And they might say yes or no. Propose ruler. If you have adults of your dynasty that are not currently your ruler, you can propose that they become the ruler of another monarchy if their regency doesn't have a valid heir. That is pretty cool to happen. And then the last one, shared maps. This allows you to basically just share your map with another country. Obviously, way more important early in the game when you haven't discovered a lot of the world. And the next screenshot we see here is the anti-piracy agreement. So you're going to somebody and saying like, hey, would you mind not privateering against my nation? And they'll say yes or no. I wonder if you can just carry on doing it anyway. And then that really upsets them. I imagine you would be able to, because I think that is pretty cool. If you could say, yes, I'm not going to privateer. There's no examples, of course, as an Englishman of this happening in the past. Don't worry about it too much. You can get privateers in the game and you can say, don't do that to me, please. And I guess they'll say, yes, we won't do it. And then, yeah, like I say, it'd be pretty cool if they could just carry on doing it anyway. And then it has a massive, like, diplomatic relations effect on them or something like that. Or, you know, all the other nations look and say, like, you said you wouldn't do that. And then we found out you are doing it, so we're all going to dislike you. I think that would be cool if it's in there. Obviously, as I said, some historical examples of that happening. And then the next kind of actions is hostile actions. These are actions that tend to be more offensive to the receiving part and damages your opinion and trust. Some of these include intervene in war. Any empire could join in on the defender's side in a war if the opinion that that country has of you is high enough. So that's interesting. Yeah, any empire could just join a defensive war. I guess that kind of makes sense in some ways. Isolate from allies. This will make them break an alliance they have, but it will cost you a fair amount of favors. That is a good one. Gives you a little bit more flexibility on like trying to break a nation out of an alliance, so then you can attack them. Kind of a bit more of a long-term play there. But I have found that annoying, and I'm sure many of you have, where like a certain nation you're after always has like really good alliances. You could never attack them, or it was way harder. It looks like we have got a way to like prize them out of that alliance and then take advantage of that. Even if it's not attacking them, just bring them into your alliance or something like that. Send insult, everyone's favorite, reduces their opinion of you, and they will get a casus belli as well. And then threaten war. If you have a casus belli for a province, you can use this to threaten a war, and they have the chance of accepting it. Only kingdoms and empires can do this. So this is just going to another nation and saying like, I'm going to attack you for that province, you know, just give it to me and we won't have to worry about all the warfare. I can see this being way more useful in EU5. As we know, wars are going to be a lot more impactful on your nations. So maybe there are going to be times where you just be like, yeah, do you know what, just have it, because I don't want to deal with this long war affecting my population, destroying my industry or something like that. I'll just take the loss now and not have those kind of like reoccurring effects on my nation from a long protracted war that maybe I think I'm going to lose anyway. So I'll just give you this part of my land if I have to. The next ones are all covert actions. These are actions that you will need a spy network to do. and they could be viewed as hostile, but a little bit more sneaky, as he says here. So corrupt officials reduces the effectiveness of their cabinet, and as we know, cabinet affects a lot of things in this game, so that probably will be one that most people will use. Infiltrate administration removes the fog of war over their country for a set period of time. Steal maps, again, just steal maps rather than trading for it. Support rebels. This is something that unlocks in the Age of Renaissance and can help you truly weaken your enemies, so you can support rebels. They will rebel against them, and then I guess if you have supported them, there's a chance they might even join your nation if they are successful. We've already seen recently that if they are the same culture as you, if they were previously part of your nation, if you do support them, they will then join yours. But I wonder if just supporting random rebels, I wonder if the same thing happens. Again, that could be kind of cool. You saying, I'll support you, I'll give you money, but you join me if you are successful. So kind of trading one overlord for another. I wouldn't want that happening all the time, but I wonder if you help them enough, it would be something that could happen. The next one, quite a long dev diary this week, as you can see. The next ones are economy actions. These tend to be actions with a little bit more of a grey zone between friendly and hostile, and are more or less related to the economy side of the game. This includes block building in country. This will block them from building buildings in your locations and can be useful when you don't want some English trade offices in all your cities. Why would you ever not want that to happen? Embargo nation. This reduces the market attraction of their markets in your locations, making them more likely to trade in other markets. And then the last one here is request a loan. This is something that you usually tend to do on a banking country, so you can get money from them. That makes sense, doesn't it? And if you're not sure what that means, that was covered in a previous dev diary, where you can basically play as a banking country, if you want to think of it that way, build banks in different places, and then just play the money game, just lending money to people and all that kind of stuff. So that is how that's going to work. But you can do it with other nations as well. And then the last one he's going to cover here is access actions. There are 3 types of this. Military access, food access, where you can supply your armies when moving through their territory, and fleet basing rights, where you can have your ships in their port. So again, the first 2 about being able to move your army even into their land. Then the food access, so then you can feed them whilst they're in their land. And then the fleet one is just about having their ports for your ships to kind of, recoup and then allow them to explore elsewhere and all that kind of stuff. All of them have options to offer it to another country and request it from them, while military access can now also be bought with gold. So there you go. You can actually just buy military access if you want to. Of course, there are many country-specific diplomatic actions, but they're not going to cover those till after Christmas, when they're going to start talking about the unique flavor that certain places have, which is really cool, actually, that we're going to get that information not till Christmas. So as we've discussed all the way through all these dev diaries, this game isn't coming out anytime soon. If I had to guess, I'd say the end of next year. If they're not even going to talk about flavor till next year, we are some way off. We haven't even had the official announcement yet, so we are quite a way off from the game actually coming out. And then Johan just giving us a little bit of a sneaky thing here. Next week, they're going to talk about something completely different. So I'm not sure what that's going to be. We've had a lot of dev diaries about military, how you do war, how you end war, these treaties and things like that. So I guess next week is going to be something entirely different, maybe going back to population or something like that. We'll find out in a week. But with that, we'll leave it there for today. As always, hit that like button if you've enjoyed it. Subscribe if you're new here. I'm covering all the dev diaries up to official announcement, launch and beyond. And there'll be a lot of EU5 on the channel in the future. And I also cover Crusader Kings in a very similar manner. But we'll leave it there for today, and I'll see you in the next one.